slavery and servitude, except for as punishment for crime, and gave Congress the power to enforce this by legislation. The 13th Amendment was the first of three amendments to be passed following the Civil War. This amendment was important because it made the act of slavery as a whole unconstitutional. The U.S. government agreed with the prospect that if all men are created equal, then some people shouldn't be owned by others. The amendment ensured the end of slavery. Although Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, some were concerned that it was temporary and it only freed slaves. It did not abolish the act of slavery itself. The 13th Amendment marked the beginning of a new era for civil rights.
The roots of the 14th Amendment date back to a time period when the United States was trying to get back to its original state, the Reconstruction era. Written by James Madison, this amendment's goal was to establish that we are all equal under the law. Presidents Andrew Jackson and Abraham Lincoln were trying their hardest to get the South back into the Union and to further get the North and the South to cooperate. Former slaves were trying to get back to the real world, but since there were slight difficulties due to the opposition of one side from the other, since they were not getting the equality that Lincoln, the 13th Amendment, and the Emancipation Proclamation had promised, the 14th Amendment was thus born. This amendment was ratified on July 9, 1860, and it essentially guaranteed citizenship to all persons born or naturalized in the United States, which included former slaves who were recently freed. In addition, it forbids states from denying any person life, liberty, or property without due process of law, or to deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of laws. By directly mentioning the role of the states, the 14th Amendment greatly defined what it intended to do. The Civil Rights Act of 1866 also then came as the first United States federal law to define United States citizenship, and it affirmed that all citizens were equally protected under the law. It was mainly intended to protect the civil rights of African Americans in the wake of the American Civil War. Then there came the question of how exactly equal are we? This question was tested in the 1896 Plessy v. Ferguson case, which was a landmark Supreme Court decision that established that it was constitutionally legal for African Americans and other minorities to be separate from whites, as long as they were all treated equally. And believe it or not, it took a whole another 58 years for the judicial system and the federal system to realize that separate but equal was just not how things should be. 58 years, and it took the 1954 case of Brown versus Board of Education to become a precedent that separate but equal should not apply in the schoolhouse. This landmark case essentially was a stepping stone to turning the promises of the 14th Amendment into reality. It would then take another 10 years for the United States to even realize that this was not enough, and that came the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Signed by Lyndon B. Johnson, this landmark piece of civil rights came after civil rights leaders' long struggles and fights for equality, from peaceful protests to even getting arrested. But the arrests were not what mattered. All that mattered was the fact that they were just trying to get what they believed was right for all of the United States. Legislation in the United States outlawed discrimination based on color, race, religion, sex, or national origin. This act also overturned the laws of Jim Crow, which were racial segregation laws that came after the Reconstruction period that stated that discrimination based on race had nothing wrong with it, as long as everybody got fair treatment.
The 15th Amendment of the Constitution prohibits federal and state governments from denying a citizen the right to vote based on race, color, or a previous condition of servitude. It is the third of the Reconstruction Amendments that followed after the Civil War. This amendment was a long overdue bid at establishing suffrage for African Americans. It set a standard that race or color was absolutely no reason to deny someone the right to vote. The 15th Amendment contributed to the overall theme in America at the time, which was that all people should be treated the same. Suffrage was a huge step for civil rights. After the 15th Amendment was enacted, there was still a strong presence from the racist group, the Ku Klux Klan, or the KKK. Long after African Americans had gained rights, the KKK were still committing racist hate crimes to hinder African Americans' rights.
Today, there are actually punishing crimes that protect people who have been hurt under these three amendments. The enacting of these amendments were stepping stones into getting equality, especially for minorities. Struggle does, however, slightly continue today, but not just for African Americans. Many others, including women, Hispanics, Asian Americans, people with disabilities, the homeless, and even other minorities. The main issues of equality today are that some people believe they are free to be with whoever they want and do whatever they want, and whether or not immigrants deserve the same equal protection under the law that we are receiving. These three amendments have impacted the United States in the sense that even women are fully allowed to vote, and essentially anyone is allowed to obtain American citizenship. There is even a month of dedication towards leaders who fought hard for the freedom of themselves and others. Although we still struggle as a society for equality, we today are essentially equal, and we are beginning to make and receive progress to get all the equality that we rightfully deserve.
Now let's see what some teachers from First Colonial have to say about civil rights. Why do you think there are ongoing struggles in civil rights?
It's a tough question. I think that there are too many different types of people that are trying to outdo each other because everybody has to think that they're right. Everybody wants to be the one that's correct. That's what I think.
Why do you think there's ongoing struggles in civil rights?
For some reason, this country has a hard time honoring its creed of freedom to everyone, especially those that are not Caucasian. It was stripped from the Native Americans. It was never applied to the people who built this country via slavery. Greed has put a blind eye on righteousness in this country. So therefore, people's civil liberties are being, I don't want to say swept away, but kept from them. Some cases for the lack of education themselves. I know for Black Americans, the only pathway to freedom is paved by education. That's the only way I'm here today, teaching in this building, because I'm an educated man, because my parents are educated and my grandparents are educated. That in itself created a pathway of civil rights for me. Hold on. Walk around. Shit, they lucky we ain't in the streets. Sorry. There you go. That's my answer.
Thank you.